On this episode of Just Informed Talk, I sit down with Chris, the former U.S. Air Force intelligence asset who has been an anonymous source to me for the last 3+ years, and he wants to come out publicly, and this is part 2 of our interview where we discuss everything. We come at the China virus, we talk about InfoWars, Clear Force, ShadowNet, we talk about Project Looking Glass, and a whole bunch of other stuff that you guys are going to want to stick around and check out. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Just Informed Talk. I'm your host, Craig. Today, once again, we're joined by a very special guest. His name is, well, might be Chris. And for lack of a better way of describing it, he's been here on the show before. You guys know him, but if you don't know him, he'll give you just a short rundown of who he is and why he's come forward. But this is an anonymous source I've had for over 4 years. We've had a running correspondence, and the long story short is he's given me great, reliable information. He has a pretty interesting story and background, and he wants to come out and come public and share this information with all you guys. And we're gonna talk about a lot of different stuff. But thanks for coming on the show, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me back again. I appreciate it.
I guess we'll just kind of pivot into what we were going to originally do, which is I had a few questions we were going to go through just to cover some topics. And if we don't hit them all, maybe you'll be so kind as to come back on the show and we can finish up some other stuff later, and just keep this going. Because, and again, you guys down in the comments, if you guys like what we're doing here and you want to see Chris come back on, please leave a comment and let us know, because I'm interested. So the first thing I want to talk about is China, and the coronavirus. So we have all this information, and they talk about, the Wuhan lab and the gain of function, manipulation and the sequencing of the virus and everything else. But what's your kind of take on that when it comes to, the connections that kind of come, it connects to the election, it connects to Biden, everything else, kind of break that down from your perspective, what you see it all as.
You're talking about the Wuhan virus?
Oh yeah. The China virus.
Timing tells us a lot of, timing often tells us a story without telling us the story. And if you look back at what was happening before the Wu flu took place, maybe you should edit that part out, but before that took place, we were just destroying China on the trade war. We were basically boxing them in the South Pacific. We had some serious alliance trade agreements going on with Laos, with Vietnam, which is still going on, and they were starting to break. On the home front, as far as America, on our front, Trump was really starting to run away with things, and it was getting to the time of the year where he was going to start to have rallies again. And rallies, as you know, from 2016 was a big deal. So I have no way to prove this, but it's pretty obvious from the timing that this whole thing was planned. And I would be absolutely shocked if it didn't. I wouldn't be shocked if it came out later that this was coordinated to assure that their presidential nominee, who was Biden, does not have to debate Donald Trump, because Donald Trump would just destroy him in a debate. Not just because Donald Trump is good at debating, but also because he has facts on his side. He has a considerable amount on Biden. Ukraine, look what's come out in the news the last few days about Hunter. And it's another topic altogether. The second thing is that it puts America, the West in general, in a bad position with the trade war. I mean, we have to focus more on these issues, and we have to focus on the economy. So it slowed down a record-breaking economy. The third thing is that and this is the most important for the left, at least, it gave the left, one of the most important things, it gave the left options to attack the president on. Racism wasn't working. Sexism wasn't working. There are little stories about the bounty system. The Russian bounty military system wasn't working. The Russia thing definitely didn't work. Nothing was working for them, so they had to find a way to shift the narrative, to gain control. They had to find something that would allow them to control that narrative with one topic for a long period of time leading up to the election. And the best way to do that would be a pandemic type situation. For years, this is even before Trump, that if they were going to try to deploy something, it would be a chemical or biological weapon. This thing's turned out to be more of a, I mean, I definitely believe that it was created in China based on what I've personally looked at, and I definitely believe that it was coordinated with. I don't want to get your video shut down, so all I will say was coordinated with Western associates, and I definitely believe that it was specifically released at a specific time to slow certain things down, which I already went into. Um, but you know, another thing to consider is that we could also find out, we could also see who's involved with certain things by responses about certain things. How do I put this? Look what's happened to China since this has been released. Look at the fires, the explosions, certain things that have happened in China. So
The
I don't know
epic,
if
the incredible flood, excuse me, the incredible flooding that's
yeah,
happened. And also there's been just today I was looking at a $2 billion smartphone factory that's just went up in flames today.
yeah,
So
why? Yeah.
yeah,
And I mean that's a military wing of China's communication system. So that's a big deal. And but there's been other things. I mean, like look at the Q drop from several years ago when there was an explosion on one of the towers in China. There's been a lot of stuff, a lot of Q drops
or
about
like
China.
the main Google offices burning down in China and all that.
There's
Yeah,
been a
so
ton
I
of stuff.
totally get it. I think, and like you said, without getting permanently banned from whatever and getting everyone getting this all kicked off, which I shouldn't be afraid. You shouldn't be afraid to say what's
Bad,
the
isn't it?
truth. And I don't worry about it because I've said this before. I put my life to God. And if whatever happens, it's going to be nothing because I'll be glad that I've done what I thought was the right thing. And there's never going to be a point where I'm like, I'm not going to I'm going to beat myself up or censor myself for these people. So, but I think our audience gets it because we've covered this extensively in the Q posts and we've gone through like Q's asked the questions that are really important that are, pointing to an outcome. So anything else on that, or do you want to go to the next topic?
We have so much we could talk about with China, and I think that's something that
You
we.
mentioned you want to talk about Joe Biden in China. What were you
Oh,
going to?
okay, yeah. Biden said yesterday or the day before, what was that release that he kicked out about Trump was trying to get patents in China? Did you notice? Did you see that release? I don't remember the exact quote. I don't have it up in front of me, but very
Well,
easily
he's
found.
not referencing Trump. He's referencing Ivanka Trump getting the patents for her fashion brand.
Yes,
And that and in relation to Hunter Biden. So he's trying to like draw the
that's right.
parallel.
But the interesting thing is that, and what I was trying the left always accuses that which of what they're guilty of. It's interesting to look back at some of the things that they've said. The Russia collusion, the Ukraine collusion, all these things. And if a person ever gets bored, they can go back even further than that. Look back to the last 20 years, 30 years, and it's really interesting to see that they always accuse somebody else of the exact thing that, and they usually do it before that person can accuse them of it to muddy the water. You and I have discussed this many times before, and because and they would never be able to get away with that if they didn't have the media shield on their side. If the media was asking the right questions, they would never get away with it. But as long as the media is their shield and their sword, they can get away with that. They can play that game. Media is their most dangerous weapon. They really are the enemy of the bad ones, which are many. I'm not going to sit here and say there are a lot of good ones. No, there's more bad than good. From what I've personally seen, there are a lot of bad. And let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question. Has one individual from the media ever contacted you one single time to say, hey, we'd like to know more about this that you're discussing. Would you mind discussing it with us? Has anybody ever done that?
Well, I've had a few actually. I never, but the funny thing is they'll reference me in stories. Like I've been on the cover of the New York Times, my picture at least, and in a story that kind of references me indirectly. I've been written about by the Huffington Post, where they actually they highlight my whole channel. Never once reached out for me for comment. The only one that I can remember where they actually reached out to me for comment, and it wasn't even on a story that was related to Q. It was on some, Q hit piece or something, was from Forbes magazine. They did reach out to me once, but yeah, I mean, they never reach out to you. And like I said, when I was like a year ago or something or so, I was literally just, I woke up one morning and I'm on the computer doing everything I do. And I saw this, New York Times article, and I look at the picture and I go, is that me? And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm on the cover of the New York Times. But, yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. No, I haven't, they never reach out to me about like, hey, we're going to do a deep dive on, the corruption in government and we want your input. No, never.
And you see, that's the interesting thing. They'll never contact you. I'll put myself out. I'll open up a little bit more about myself. Anybody who checks into, if they were to look into me and check into me, they would see that I have considerable credentials on many different fronts. So I could be considered an expert on certain things, but they would never contact me. Who would they contact instead? They would contact people who are yes men to their narrative, because they don't care about the facts. They don't care. That's why they'll never contact you. They'll never contact anybody that's going down the road that you're going down. And just to be clear, there are, just to be clear to the media individuals that watches, if you don't mind, I'll say this. There are some things that we look into with the Q research. There are some things that are in the conspiracy theory realm. Very few things, but there are things that are there. But we have to eliminate certain things to find facts. We have to eliminate conspiracy. We have to eliminate fraud. We have to eliminate everything in a search for facts. We're in essence doing your job, and I'm talking directly to the journalists that watch this. That's what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be eliminating conspiracy. You're supposed to be eliminating fraud. You're supposed to be eliminating liars, and you're supposed to be seeking out the truth to provide that truth to the public. We're doing that. You're not. And I don't see any of you coming on this show and talking to this man right here, Just Informed Talk. I don't see you talking to anybody in similar positions as him. So you're failing at your job. You're failing your job. You're failing the people of the United States. You're failing the country in general. You're failing, period. It's the most important job, and one of the most important jobs in my opinion, and you are completely dropping the ball on that.
You hear that, media? You just got called out.
And one final thing. The media, you created us. It wasn't the other way around. We didn't go searching for QAnon. You created the Q researcher. You created the need for Q to drop what Q drops. You created this massive global, many million people movement of independent researchers that you cannot track in totality, that are looking into every single facet of your life, the lives of the people that you're supposed to be protecting, and everybody involved in that. You have created this situation because you didn't do your job. So are we conspiracy theorists because we're breaking out facts? I will debate any single person at any time within the media, and I will dominate you to no extent. But that would never happen. This man here would do the same thing. That would never happen. I guarantee that pretty much 90+% of the Anons out there, because we are up to date on current events more than most people have ever been. And pick any of them and they'll jump right into a conversation and they'll be able to dominate it because they know things, because they've been looking into things. And the funny thing is, one final thing on this, the funny thing is that if indeed this was a planned little shutdown, well, guess what that did? That just gave people more time to look into things. So thanks.
Yeah, I mean, and it's sad, but it's true. And look, as I have to clarify too, I'm a Christian, I'm an evangelist, I am a conservative, and I just, even if I was just joking about calling out all the media, but in a sense, you're 100% right. We have to show them that they're failing at their jobs, and that's the problem. And now, who knows? They'll probably write another fake news story about me, and I'll get more hit pieces in Huffington Post or whatever. But I don't care, because, like I said, I put everything to God, and we will gladly have whoever on the show that wants to come on. And if you want to talk about real topics, but of course they know that they've been given directives from their bosses in corporate and their puppet masters who say, you can't, there are topics they just can't talk about, that they can't validate. They can't give you a platform to debate them on it, because that would validate that it exists. And that's the problem.
And, and there's some of them that, and I think what you just said right there is correct. They have really most of them have no choice on a lot of these things. They have to report what they have to report. And, I look at a guy like Tim Pool. And Tim Pool was like an ultra liberal. And that's not a bad, to be a liberal is not a bad thing. Let me just make that clear. Communist is a bad thing. Maoist is a bad thing. Marxist is a bad thing. But there are people who are moderate, liberal, moderate, conservative, whatever. I'm a Republican, but I've never had a problem with liberals as long as they love the country. I didn't care. He was one of those guys, and now he's completely he's seeing everything for what it is because he's taken the time to look into these things. And what's happened? Well, he's completely come over to the pro-Trump side. Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't
Hey, you know, it's funny. I just had Adam Krigler. He was co-hosting with Tim Pool. I did an interview with him just recently, and you know, even we talked about Q briefly, and I asked him about it, kind of, you know, in our conversations leading up to the interview, and basically, you know, I think Tim knows what it is. He knows everything. And me and Tim, like, I like a lot of his stuff, but I disagree with a lot of things he believes, especially when it comes to like religion and that stuff. But that aside, you know, they talk to the people at Google. They know what's verboten, you know, what you can't be mentioning on your channels, and or they'll lose the monetization. I'm one of those people who, in a way, when I got demonetized on YouTube, it kind of freed me, because I was like, well, what's the worst that could happen? You know, I mean, I've lost all the funding that they were providing me through the advertising, so I guess I'll just do whatever I want, and I just want to be left alone. I just want to have my freedom and have my little platform and my little corner, and that's it. And so far it's been okay, but we'll see after this interview how that goes. But
well, just if it causes problems, just remove it from the. You don't have to release it on that, but protect yourself on that. But I just felt
I'm not worried about that at all. Like I said before, I'm going to keep speaking my mind regardless. And but let's get into the next questions, because I got a few more here I want to get through, and I really think my audience really would be interested to hear your take on this. So, James Comey. You had wrote me a very weird message one day, and I say weird because, you know, sometimes you'll leave me a little note and I'll be like, it makes me start to think, and I go, whoa, you know, what does this mean? Who is he? Because where does he come from? What are the references that you were making to, like, the color of his beard and different, what is all that? Can you give me an idea, give the audience an idea of what you meant by that?
I mean, like, a person, an individual, we're kind of stuck with, dark brown hair, dark brown beard. You ever note, with Comey's always had his color, at least in public, has always been very similar to mine. Now all of a sudden it's very bronze. It's very, very, what would be very kind of blondish, and it's odd that he. I remember that email that I sent you. He's gone through a lot of physical changes as far as appearance-wise in the last few months, and most of it was just hair color, beard color, skin tone in a lot of the way. Very, very skin tone, very oriented. He's usually much paler, like I am. But I know that can come a lot to if a person goes to Hawaii or gets a tan and all that. But just the whole thing in general, the way he's dressing, the way he's communicating, everything about him is very odd, and it was very odd at that point, and it's been odd for a while now.
You don't
Comey,
want to, like, kind of elaborate on what I thought you were maybe hinting at, like, he is somebody else than he says he is.
Well, yeah, his real name is not James Comey, and that isn't his real name, and he has serious ties to Iran, and I'm trying to think of how we can get into this. There are individuals, let me put it to you this way, there are individuals that are no longer in the FBI, but that are connected to the FBI, that have serious connections to a woman named Valerie Jarrett. They've followed Valerie Jarrett her entire career, and they have posting as far as where a person is stationed, posting history within. Again, posting means where you're stationed, posting history in Tehran, in that area. And they are connected. They've been connected with Valerie Jarrett for a very long time. And Valerie Jarrett, in a lot of people's minds, in the intelligence community, was the handler of Barack Obama. So My
Like, for
point
instance, Peter Strzok grew up I believe he went to high school in Saudi Arabia, and he lived in Iran for a while and all that.
Yeah, and Brennan, he had serious connections to Iran. Brennan changed to Islam, and 20 years ago, I believe it was. But if you look at if you look at a lot of these, there's three really, but there's two main factions that have always kind of fought for control in the U.S. government, and I'm throwing aside the pro-America people. I'm talking about outside individuals. One of them is related to the Clinton side of things, and that's more connected to the UK, to Israel, to those two countries specifically. And then we get into the Obama side of things, and that's more related to the Muslim Brotherhood, Iran, Ukraine. Ukraine is definitely involved in that. And there were a lot of interesting dynamics that took place during the Obama administration while Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State, because you saw this kind of vying for power between both groups. For example, the pipeline the Keystone pipeline that Clinton wanted to bring in, from Canada, Valerie Jarrett came in and shut that down, and they fought over that, and people were disappearing left and right during that time period. So at the end of that situation, I don't know who you could really say who won that. I guess the American people would be the people who won that, because those two groups were definitely fighting. It's not a secret that Jared and Clinton really disliked each other immensely. So they undermined each other immensely. In many ways, it's kind of funny. An ex-colleague of mine, joked that because remember what I said just a little bit ago, Comey's connected to the Jarrett camp, right? So if you look back at who released the emails on Clinton leading up to the 2016 election, well, it was Comey. It was Comey's FBI, and that's Jarrett's camp. And then, so it's kind of funny if you look back at, it shouldn't be funny, but it is in a way, how the two groups have just systematically gone after each other so much for so long. And the interesting part is that nobody is asking the question of is why are these two camps so intimately connected to foreign countries? Why was Bill Clinton raised so much and conditioned so much in the UK and Israel? Why was Barack Obama so conditioned and connected so much to the Middle East, those specific countries in the Middle East? And nobody's coming out, and the right people aren't coming out and saying, hey, what the hell's going on here? What's going on here? And I bet you, I would guarantee you that most Anons, most viewers have no idea even what Bill Clinton's background is. You should look into that. I'm saying this directly to the Anons.
Yeah, he has. I've read the stories about his time in the UK and all that. It's really it's telling. Didn't he go to I want to say he went to Oxford or something. It was Oxford, yeah. So yeah, people don't even know that. They go what? He went to Oxford? You're yeah, he lived in the UK, and that's where he was a hippie with long hair and
right.
a radical, and he actually I'm trying to think. I you know what? I'll do some research afterward. And we'll touch on that again later.
Another topic.
Yeah, and so okay, then yeah, that kind of goes into it.
It's a difficult situation to fully explain from in such a short time period. So the best way I could really put it is that you have two major camps during that time period. You have two major camps. You have the it's not really the Obama camp, it's the Jarrett camp versus the Clinton camp. And you notice that both have these big foundations. You have the Obama Foundation, you have the Clinton Foundation. And they both are kind of trying to overlap each other on certain things. Both tried to beat each other to the punch in Haiti. And, with the Obama camp, you get these doofuses like Sean King, that guy. And all the scams they pulled in Haiti. And they have the Clintons and all the stuff they pulled in Haiti. And it's just an endless supply. If people ever were really interested in looking in these issues, they should look more deep. Although I think that you guys have looked into Haiti, probably considerably at this point. But Sean King, his dealings and they're public, his dealings in Haiti and connected with Obama are pretty bad. Nobody ever talks about that.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I just saw, I posted a video on my Twitter a while ago. It was the former, I hope I get this right for his title, but he was the former president of the Congress of Haiti, I guess. And he came out and basically said that some person claiming to work for the Clintons showed up to him one day and was like, if you let the Clintons do this, that, and the other, we'll make you the richest man in Haiti. And he was basically saying it at a pro-Trump rally in front of a huge crowd. And he's like, and I told them they could take that money and blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, I think that's a rabbit hole for a whole nother day, because that's a
Big
deep
one.
one. But
That's a big one. That one right there will take a lot of time. But the, you know, that I think that's what, at least in my shoes, that's one reason I came here. If I could give any information to, even if it touches one person, you know, oh, well, that's interesting, I'm going to look into that. Even if it does that for one person, that's great. That was worth my time.
okay, so let's keep going then. And I'll tell you why at the end. But Tori, Millie Weaver, ShadowNet, ClearForce, InfoWars. That's literally just what I have written down here. What's your take on IIAs? What's your take on the privatization of that technology that was used in Afghanistan, and that kind of societal manipulation as from your view? I mean, because I'm sure you're aware of it all. You've seen all the info, so you give your take on it.
I am intimately familiar with these things. How do I put this? You know, the individuals that presented the individuals that presented those videos are not on the level. Tori, for example, is not on the level. She is a individual with a vast track record of crime, of fraud, and she should not be trusted by anybody. She has a massive record of crime and fraud. And I mean, convictions. And stolen valor is another one with her. So she is a fraud to the highest level. Millie is another individual that has a very odd, bad record. And, you know, who she married, an individual that was connected to the Turkish intelligence. Jones is another person that Q themselves have said, you know, there are connections with them with some bad people. And we've seen what Jones has done. We've seen what Jones and InfoWars has done. Do you remember Zach, the person who was pretending to be QAnon years ago on InfoWars? Long story short, they exist. What you asked me, they exist, those programs. And I'm positive that they have the information that these individuals have said. But I just feel, you know, watching that video, I feel that it's more of a setup to prepare to attack Trump. And I think that it just feels like a prelude to me to get ready to attack Trump or to diminish some information because of just who it's coming from. I can't trust it. I can't, you know, Bergey's another one. Bergey really came off as unhinged. And there are some really legitimate things that Bergey said, but not all of it. And it just felt more like a vendetta to me. And there was a lot of oddity with that situation. Do you know what I mean? Like he just randomly decided to travel down to Texas and knocked on the door at InfoWars, but InfoWars claims that they had no idea he was coming down there. However, InfoWars produced the video. It just, the whole thing was weird to me. It was odd. So there is some information in there that's good, but I don't think the information in there is anything really new to people. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we've been discussing that for a long time now.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that they're scraping cell phones and getting in Twitter accounts and stuff, you know, I meant like open source public social media accounts to get information then to be used and aggregated in a way that would help them, you know, put out certain narratives and do things that would, you know, push the population in one direction or the other. I'm not surprised about that, but I didn't know some of the stuff you were referencing there. So maybe,
well,
find that
are we getting into, are we talking about Looking Glass here? Because that's a different story.
No, we're talking about the IIAs and the ShadowNet and ClearForce, but let's get into Project Looking Glass since we're going to keep going through the because we already kind of touched on the Clinton Foundation and well, actually, let's kind of go in order here. All right, so we'll kind of save, because Looking Glass I was saving for last. So Clinton Foundation and crime against children. What's your take on, is this, because the only thing I always get referenced and I think is the one that stands out for everyone is what happened on the laptop, what happened in the Wiener laptop, the insurance file, the emails. And is there any thing you can kind of extrapolate on from that, and or add to the conversation when it comes to what Q means and what is meant when it keeps saying Clinton Foundation and crime against children? Because I know there's been reference to all types of things, underground bunkers on Epstein Island, etc.
It's a global organization. Number one, it's a global organization with ties to every country. It it has significant players involved that have been convicted of crimes against children, specifically trafficking and sex trafficking and those types of crimes against children while working for the organization. There have been little breadcrumbs through the years of drops from, there was a couple investigators, private investigators from Boston that were working with, I can't remember his name, the guy the legal guy who works for, I'll get back with you on that. The guy who's been working on the legal aspect of things with the huge arms. He's, you know who I'm talking about. Anyway, we'll scratch this part
Tom
of the
Fitton.
interview.
You're thinking of Tom Fitton.
Yeah. Anyway, what's the name of his company? I should know it right off the top of my bat, but
it's Judicial Watch.
Judicial Watch. The two investigators are working with Judicial Watch, and I think you posted something on your Twitter about them a day ago or a couple of days ago.
Yeah, basically where they were being interviewed by Congress about the
That's right.
open investigations, and they were saying that there's open investigations from other sort. It was referencing something we already talked about, but yeah, go on.
So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of crumbs through the years that that connect the Clinton Foundation to these things. This is a situation where I think all of us kind of know something is going on, but none of us have yet seen actual proof. I mean, when I was active duty, I heard a lot of things about one of the areas that was near where I was stationed at the time, and Bohemian Grove, for example. And I heard, Air Force bases have a much bigger net as far as what we keep an eye on than just, Travis Air Force Base, for example, was one of the bases. It had a very large net, and Bohemian Grove fell into that net, Sonoma County. So, we heard a lot of oddities going on about that, and I don't really know if I can go into that. I'd like to, but that's a question that I need to kind of ask somebody else. It's been a long time, but I don't know if that would breach anything. If it doesn't, then I have some cool stories.
Yeah, don't get yourself in trouble here. We'll save that again for another time. And that's really, no, I mean, I get it, because like when you have certain clearances, there's certain things you can't talk about, especially if you're given certain information. That makes sense.
Well, here's the thing. There's usually there is always a year limit on it. But for example, a family member of mine, they got out in the 70s, and they still don't talk about parts of the satellites, the first satellites that went up. Nothing that they worked on is any more secret. They still won't talk about it. So I don't really know what the legal aspect on that is, but because it's been a while now. It's been over a decade. But long story short, there are a lot of oddities in certain areas in Northern California, specifically the Wine Valley area, and there are a lot of hints out there that they're not bunkers, but underground systems, specifically a town called St. Helena, which is where Pelosi has her house, and which was right next door to the backstage or back page bust that took place several years ago. I sent you that information, didn't I, several years back?
Yeah, and also I just to add on, like I was researching before about like John Podesta or Tony Podesta. One of the Podesta brothers has an estate out there, and then all their estates are close enough together where people had speculated there's some sort of connection there.
Oh yeah, very close, very close. I'd say the area that Podesta is supposed to live in, people have said through the years, it's probably about 20-minute drive from St. Helena, and but there's and a lot of the fires took place in that area over the last few years as well.
That's what we were going to talk about next. What's your take on the fire situation out there? I know, most of the climate change people will say it's the wind and lightning and just, some random events, but what do you make of the mass outbreak out there?
Here's the thing. There has been local articles. I'm not talking about MSN. I'm talking about if you go to like San Bernardino or Orange County, these type of towns, and look at the local news. There have been arrests for arson in many of these cases. One of them took place in Lake Berryessa up north. One of them took place in the Napa Valley up north, and there was one arrest for a BLM activist in Oregon, I believe, a few weeks ago. I'm 100% positive on this. There were 2 arrests for fires that took place in Southern California when the big fires started taking place a few years ago, and they were connected to Antifa. There is a lot of information out there of arrests of these people being connected to Antifa, to BLM, and not BLM, Antifa. I can't say that I know of any that were connected to BLM. They might be, but Antifa, yes, absolutely 100% positive. I know the 2 arrests that took place in the Northern California area, Berryessa and Napa, 100% those 2 people that were arrested are connected to Antifa. All one has to do is look at the local paper, cross-reference that name to their social media, and they'll see for themselves. This is the stuff that bothers me so much about the media. How hard is that to do? I mean, this is low-level elementary research a person could do. You get the name of the person that's arrested, you look at their social media, you take 20 minutes, 30 minutes, do a little cross-referencing, and you can see exactly who the people are. So yeah.
I agree. I think that is something that it's mind-boggling when you look at the mainstream media. And the only thing that would make sense is that they just willfully are ignorant toward it. So again, here, let's talk about General Flynn. We know he was set up. We're starting to see all the proof come out in bits and pieces. I guess we covered it briefly on the Q posts earlier, but I mean, 30 months, do you think this is the month? Do you think he's getting finally going to get out of it, or what do you think?
I think he's out. I think that everybody, at least in my opinion, I think everybody kind of has felt that he's been gone for a while. He's out. And I think it being released to the public, I think the public finding out, I think it's probably going to come out very soon. But I don't think that he's been in I don't think he's been behind bars. I don't think that, with Trump in office and with the changes that the Trump campaign has made, I don't think that there's any major threat. Well, there are threats definitely to him, but I think that he's okay. But as far as the announcement to the public, I could definitely see it happening this month because we're right at the end here. I mean, we're almost in October. So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen like any time now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like seriously, any time now. Like it's got to be in the next week or 2.
I agree with that. So I guess wrapping up here, we'll talk about Project Looking Glass. What is your take on what that is? I mean, we can go back and look at some of the older Q posts where Q gave us a reference to the precision military timing that I remember the one I'm looking at it now, and I'll put it up on the screen for you guys out there where it's November 11th, 2019. So 11/11/2019. It matched it. It was the exact same IP address that was linked to the Department of Defense. And then Q says Project Looking Glass going forward in order to look back. And again, where you see Project Looking Glass referenced is, I believe, it's where it says here, this is October of 2017. So one of the first Q posts, it says projection, Dems can't lose control of the black population. At some point, the Great Awakening, and this is kind of fortuitous, right? Given where we're at some point, the Great Awakening will occur whereby these false local national black leaders are corrupt and paid off to help keep the black population poor and in need. Democrats form the Confederate States against freeing slaves. Democrats form the KKK. HRC's mentor is who? And I think that's Senator Byrd is a reference to. And it says, what happens if the truth about Haiti is released? Do Dems lose the majority of the vote? Through the looking glass, they rely on the MSM to keep the narrative going, but tech is entrenching on their controls. They missed this in 2016 and are desperately attempting to censor now due to CIA cash infusions, but this will fail. Now, this is from, mind you, this is from October of 2017. This is like one of the 9th Q post that was ever put up. Mm-hmm. So what do you think?
I'm well aware, or I'm pretty knowledgeable about Looking Glass. Looking Glass is a very interesting situation, and I will get into this piece by piece. First of all, just to say there are a lot of ridiculous theories out there on Looking Glass. One of them was that it's a time travel machine. Another one was, and by the way, one of the people that I'll give you the name of the person that, and you can produce it to your viewers after. One of the people that came out with this claim is a stolen valor individual that was nailed by Don Shipley, who's a former Navy SEAL. And this guy's a child molester and such. So don't believe any of his Looking Glass stuff. He's full of baloney. And here's the best way to describe Looking Glass. And this is probably going to blow a lot of minds. Okay, so consider your life. I'm going to tell a story here to make this easier. Consider each viewer, consider your specific life, how you are right now at this exact moment, and what had to happen for you to get to the exact moment we're at today. You had some good relationships, you had some bad relationships, you had certain education, you had everything that makes you you are your experiences that make you you. That is you. If you remove one of those from a situation, it alters what you are today. What does this have to do with anything? Well, Looking Glass, each of us, each person, each individual kind of has a lower level ability to look into certain things. Well, if I do this, then this might happen. And these two things need to happen for this to happen. Every single person, kind of thinks like that. So what's Looking Glass? Looking Glass is a much larger system, a computerized analytic system that takes everything into consideration. What you have to do, what I have to do, what this group has to do. What happens if somebody dies? What happens if somebody gets sick? What happens if the media decides to hold this up until today, as far as reporting it? It takes all these things into consideration, and it kicks out a very likely outcome to certain things. So there are certain people, something that Anons like to call themselves is, well, I'm an autist. That's what Anons like to say. I'm autist. But in truth, what an Anon, or the real Anons, the legitimate Anons, what they really are is they have low latent inhibition. They have the ability their mind can stream very different. The normal person doesn't stream outside stimuli. An Anon will stream everything at once. So let's say I'm looking at this bottle, and a normal person will say, well, this is a Snapple bottle. This is peach tea. But a person with low latent inhibition, the autist, they're going to look at this, they're going to see how it was made, how the plastic was hardened, how the cap was hardened. That's how their mind works. And the point I'm getting to is they can see things. An autist, which is really a low latent inhibition individual, they can see things on a much higher spectrum. It's not magical. It's not mystical. There's anything about that. It's certain people can stream stimuli at a much higher level than others. And the higher their IQ, the more they can do it. Now, how does this tie in with Looking Glass? Looking Glass takes that to a whole different level. See, in my case, for example, I'm pretty good when it comes to information and being able to stream information, but I only have a biological computational device, my brain. That's all I have. It might be at a very high level in comparison to other people, to what I'm streaming, but it's still just a brain. But a device that can stream everything at once, that can stream all the news, all the historical factors, all the comments, that's reading all the social media posts, that's reading all the private messages, that's hearing all the phone calls, it's taking everything, every single thing into consideration to deliver a potential highly likely outcome. That's Looking Glass. Into the Looking Glass, I take all your information, I take all the competing information, and I come up with it comes up with a likely scenario of what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. It's a high-powered analytic system is the best way I could put it.
Well, on that terrifying note, I guess we'll go ahead and start wrapping it up. Chris, look, our conversations are pretty incredible. And I'm so thankful that you've been a friend for so long. We've had this ongoing conversation. I'm so glad now that we can bring this conversation out to the world at large. And so I guess as usual.
Did that really freak you out?
Well, I mean, it's to the extent that you can imagine how
Yeah.
I've always thought this. What I always explain looking glass as, which I thought it kind of lined up with what you were saying, but I said, like, you take all the information in the world, because you think about Google and the search engines and how they collect all the data, and you put it into this quantum computer that can do what you said, like generate predictions for the likelihood of things happening. So that was kind of my very layman way of explaining it, not nearly as good as yours. But no, I'm glad to have you on. And look, if you guys want to see Chris come back on the show, leave a comment below. Let us know what you're thinking. Give us topics and questions or whatever, and maybe we'll feature them on another show, and maybe we'll be able to get you on. Because I know there's, believe it or not, guys, there's even more to it all than what we talked about today. So, Chris,
There's a lot more. We could talk about topics galore, man.
Yeah, I mean, so tell us what you want us to talk about, and hopefully we'll be able to get him back on again, and if everything lines up, and we'll keep doing this ahead of the election, because we got to get the information out there to the people, and you guys will really, really benefit that. Go vote. Make sure you get registered to vote. Register your family. Get your friends. Everyone go vote for Trump.
If anybody has any questions, I'll read all the comments this time. And if anybody has any questions, just leave them there.
So, and by the way, Chris is an anon in the truest sense of it, except, obviously you see his face, but he there's no social media to plug. There's no really any websites or anything. He's just doing this because he loves his country, which is why I respect what he's doing that much more. So I thank you, Chris, for joining me here today. And if you guys have a question for him or you comment for him, put it in the comments, and he says he's going to read them. So that's where we're going to go ahead and leave it, though. Any parting words for our audience, Chris?
I'm showing my face. I did read a few comments last time. I'm showing my face because I wanted to, one big thing is I wanted to show people that they don't need to be afraid about these things. That we're in this together. We're Americans, and I'm not afraid of these people, so you shouldn't be afraid of these people either. And I'm not saying go out there and, punch some people in the face, but I'm saying don't be afraid to stand up for what you believe in. I mean, you believe in God. You believe in the nuclear family. You believe in America. You believe in the republic. There's no reason to hide from that. There's no reason at all to hide from that, especially because now you have to stay indoors, especially because now, they're giving this whole social distancing thing and they took you away from work. Don't be afraid of these people. Stop being afraid of these people. Look at them. Don't be afraid of them. That's all I have to say about it today.
I just every time I think about them, I just think of Jerry Nadler, and then I'm feel comforted that everything. This is what we're up against. I think to myself, Yeah,
a lot of those people, we can bring them back into the fold. I mean, I've talked to a lot of them through the years, and a lot of them come from really sad situations. Truly, they do. And it's hard for me sometimes to look at a person who hates my country and give them any sympathy. Typically, I wouldn't give them any. But every once in a while, I'll meet one and I say, okay, this individual I could bring back into the fold. I can get this individual. And when people like that are brought back into the fold, they're typically very loyal because you're a person who brought them back in. You gave them some support. You gave them something they've never felt before. So, yeah.
Well, and it's the ultimate thing for a Christian, as I say, is we're out to bring people to Christ. And, if you read the Bible and you actually read it, you'll see that most of the people who are some of the biggest names in the Bible did some pretty bad stuff and lost their way at some point or another. But because they believed, because they put their faith in Christ or God at the time before Christ, they were brought back into the fold, like you said. So that's a great way to end it. And what a positive message. So Chris, you're welcome on this show anytime at all whatsoever. I will open up the schedule for you, and I want you guys again to go down in the comments, let them know what you think, what your questions are, etc. Maybe they'll give us some topics to go into next time. But Chris, thank you for coming on the show, and it's a pleasure.
Thank you. God bless America.
God bless America.